Welcome to the Truth Wins podcast. This is episode 89. It's called Teach Us to Pray. My name is Todd Sherman. I'm your host. As always, with me is Stu. Say hey, Stu.
Hey, Stu.
And we got a special guest with us today. We're going to be talking, mix those two words together, prayer, which I think is the most, what are the two words I wrote that were really profound, guys? Oh, it's most intimidating and inadequate. Most people feel intimidated and inadequate when they think about prayer, Christians.
Maybe misunderstood.
But that doesn't start with an I. I'm going with alliteration here, okay?
Actually, that wouldn't be alliteration because that's a consonant.
Ill understood.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to speak yet. I already told you that. So he doesn't.
He's already broken the
rules.
rules.
He's already broken the rule. You can't talk until after time to Stump Stew.
We needed help.
But you're a pastor. You're former.
I wanted to help you.
Pastor as I was. So it's just tough for us not to talk.
That's right.
We just talk. We think that's our spiritual gift is you gab. All right. Well, let's before he keeps talking, let's go to time to Stump Stew. All right, Stu, back on the transgender homosexual train here with our past episode. I got to be careful how I phrase that, right? Our last several times to Stump Stews have been from our episodes talking about transgender and homosexuality and all that. So we're going to do that again. There's no literal train in here. We're just figurative. All right. So John says, so gay people didn't exist before this century? Sorry, bud. They've always existed, and you have no right to make their lives miserable because you don't like it. What do you say to that, Stu?
I don't know where he got the idea that we said that gay people didn't exist before this century.
But he is true that you make their lives miserable. I know
if you
that
look at
for a fact.
Sodom and Gomorrah, we read the Bible, that we know that this is nothing new. Man's attempt to redefine sexuality in his own image has existed for all that time. So I don't think we said that. If we did, we were wrong, John. Mm-hmm. He says they've always existed, like gay people, and you have no right to make their lives miserable. John, I would say I probably have no way of making many gay people's lives miserable. They probably don't even know me. But I think what happens is I feel for the people who get caught in this lifestyle is it tends to make their own lives miserable. They seem to be prone more to suicide, to alcoholism, to drugs, because I think deep inside us we have a conscience that's been put there by God, and we know when we're doing things that aren't quite right. And even if it brings a great temporary pleasure, it can still be something that our conscience tells us this isn't right and I shouldn't be doing this. So I would say I think that might be some of the cause for the misery of gay people. But there is an answer. There's a hope for them too. And we know who it is. It's Jesus.
Go. All right. That was time to Stump Stew. All right. Well, our guest, as you can tell, is ready to start going at it. He's a good friend of mine named Blake Bush. Say hey, Blake Bush.
Hi, Blake Bush.
That's good.
Can I talk now?
You can talk now. Yes, you can speak up. You can do whatever you want.
Okay, good.
Well,
hi.
Within reason.
Yes.
Yes. So Blake, we've been friends four or 5 years now.
Well, friends is a relative term, but
for sure. For sure.
But you can use that. I'd be comfortable with that.
I got you out of jail.
Like
right.
You owe me a life debt.
Yeah,
so that's what you're talking
debt,
about.
So
yes.
It's an obligation to be here.
It's an obligation to be my friend, which is pretty much all my friends, right? Either mom paid them off.
Oh, I'm glad to hear you have others.
I paid them off. Yes,
sure.
yes. So Blake is like-minded, as we said earlier offline here. He also has the spiritual gift of sarcasm, which the Old Testament prophets and Jesus himself often employed.
Right.
And I try to do as much as I can.
And Todd draws out of me.
And yes. So when we get together as couples, because we met him through another couple that were church planners around the same time we were. That's Blake and Kristen. They planted a church up in Fort Collins, and around the same time, And so when we all get together, Blake and I kind of feed off each other. So we just kind of keep one up on each other with sarcasm and silliness. So our wives are very kind. They're generous. They actually laugh. Some of it's a courtesy laugh, but I can tell some of it's actual laughter.
I have a wristband that says WWKD. What would Kristen do? I forgot it.
Oops.
So it could be a problem.
She will let you know what you didn't do correctly
she'll
after
let me
this.
know.
Yes. But great couple. You have like 7, 8 kids, something like
12.
that, right? 12?
Yeah.
12 kids. Actual biological, though, is 4?
4.
All right. All grown.
All grown.
Empty nesters.
3 are married. So I really have 7 kids.
Yes.
And then 2 miscarriages. And I'm not even joking about that. We do consider those our kids. And so I got 9 kids.
That's awesome. Yeah, in heaven.
Yeah, that's right.
When did miscarriages, were they early on or in between kids?
One was a few weeks, and the other one, I think, was 5 months, 6 months. Yeah, so
They're always
that was
tough.
a rough one.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Were they in between the 4 kids or before
they were.
the first?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we lost one that we know of.
Well, actually, the one was early on, but then one was after our youngest. So, yeah.
Ooh, you would have had 5.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah, we lost one in between our girls, and it's just tough. But we get to see them in heaven and get to know who they are.
Yeah, shout out to my kids in heaven.
Yes. Well, your journey, though, you planted your church in Fort Collins around the time that I planted a church in Denver Metro. And you kind of were called out of that ministry around the same time, about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And what called you out of that? What was God saying to you that, it's time to change what you do week in and week out?
Well, even soon after planting the church, I knew that my kind of undiscovered country, that which was coming eventually, would be more of a regional, even statewide house of prayer idea. So I would say 4 years into it, it began to really grow in my heart and mind. So it was 10 years of being 14 years of senior pastoring Third Day Church, but for 10 years, it was this struggle to kind of hold back that vision growing in my heart to it's not now, hold on, stuff it down. And
it's funny to say, though, it's like I had to hold back.
I had to hold it back.
Call to pray. No, don't hold that back. Let it go.
Yeah.
But what do you mean by hold it back?
Well, I mean by the expressions that come from that type of vision into more regional stuff. For example, we did in 2010, we did something called the Ascent Conference up in Estes Park, and no regrets for it, but it was really an expression of unified worship and prayer. I think we had, I don't know, maybe 30 different churches involved, and 250 people came up there, and it was awesome. But there was also a sense of this is really what I want to give my heart to, and I gotta put that on hold. It's too early to launch stuff. I need to continue to care for our church and lead our church. So, which I love being a senior pastor. That wasn't the issue. I just knew that there was a burning vision in my heart that would, at some moment, have its expression. And so it was 4 years ago that I felt like the Lord sent on a backpacking trip with our college group that he's reassigning, realigning, and redeploying his troops, and to look for those and get involved with those. And I was like, wow, you're reassigning? And I began to observe it. And then 2 months later, he's like, yeah, and you're one of them. You're getting reassigned here. And so we submitted it to our...
finally? Or
finally.
Or did you still, you sure?
Well, there's always
a...
Are you sure? Are you sure you want me to... Yeah, oh, exactly. There is a stepping out of faith that's terrifying.
And that's what you did that's what you did with church planning, because that's what every church planner does. Is I'm going to start a church that doesn't even exist with people I don't even know yet,
right?
Or maybe a small number. But then once that gets going, at least you have, all right, I've got my church family, I've got some income. But then to go to your wife when your kids are, almost out or all out of the house and say, well, now we're going to do another thing that doesn't exist. With money I don't even know where it's going to come in.
I don't even know how to explain it.
Yeah. How do you go and make that pitch? I need funding for people to pray. It's easier to say I'm going to start a church, but a lot of people can't get their mind around it.
Or here's this African kid who's an orphan can you give to that through me and support my ministry? Those tangible things are within our paradigm: an orphanage, a church, a food bank ministry. But a house of prayer, a community-wide, church-based house of prayer, is like off people's grid. I mean, even just the idea of a house of prayer. I was talking to one pastor several years ago, making my rounds in the city, talking to pastors, trying to myself understand house of prayer. And so I asked him, I said, well, what do you think a house of prayer is? And he said, well, what are you talking about? Where do you get that? And I said, well, Jesus said that my dwelling place is a house of prayer for all nations. He goes, he said that?
Who said this?
A pastor in town.
Oh, really?
And I was like,
no, which one? Which church? What's his?
I
What's
am
his
not
address?
naming names.
That's
No,
like
I'm
us
teasing.
naming where
No,
we
but
are.
I literally went around to 12 pastors and asked them, what's your understanding of what a house of prayer is? And all of them said, except for one, all of them said, I have no idea what that is. And I'm like, well, I don't have an answer either, but I could maybe hazard a guess at least. So it was just interesting. Yeah, so you're exactly right. To step out and do a house of prayer, and most people go, what? What is a house of prayer?
Well, maybe if you put on the brochure, we're praying for the orphan and we're praying for the food banks,
Well, we are actually.
and just put it in small print,
Yes.
then they think their money's going to that, and then, I don't know.
Well,
think
and what's
about it.
interesting
New
too
way.
is that, the responses I would get were, first of all, I don't know what that is, and then second of all, they would say, "Oh, is this IHOP Kansas City? Mm-hmm. IHOP is it?
Yeah.
Oh, is this with Mike Bickle?" And I'd say, because I'm not real familiar with them, I've never been there, and I'd say, "Well, no, this is Jesus' house of prayer."